Hello everyone. So in this video, we are going to look at agriculture. Agriculture is part of your GS3 syllabus and a very rewarding part of your syllabus because the content in agriculture is limited, whereas you can expect questions worth 50 marks in the GS3 paper, two 10 markers and two 15 markers. So let's get to it. Let's start with taking an overview of the agriculture and allied sector. And this is the most quoted data with respect to this sector. That share of agriculture and allied in the gross value added, which is a proxy for GDP. So you can say that the contribution of agriculture and allied in the GDP is 18%, whereas the share of workforce involved in agriculture and allied sector is 43%. This is as per the latest data, the Periodic Labor Force Survey of 2025, which means that agriculture is contributing less than 1/5 of the total output, but employs almost half of the people. Through this, we can draw the inference that the output per worker is very low. So there is low productivity in agriculture, and therefore a lot of the workforce involved in agriculture is suffering from disguised unemployment. And therefore, there is a necessity of a lot of workforce to move out of agriculture into other productive sectors such as manufacturing or high value services. If we look at the growth rate in the agriculture and allied sector, the average growth rate in the past 5 years has been roughly around 5%, but it has been very volatile. So you see in 2023-24, there was the effect of El Nino, there was a bad monsoon. So we experienced 1.4% growth rate in agriculture. In years of good monsoon, the growth rate has been slightly higher. So the growth swings a lot. There is a lot of volatility, and that is because Indian agriculture is still to a very large degree dependent on monsoon. Okay, most of the agricultural land in India is rain fed, and therefore there is a lot of swings in production every year. Okay, there is no assured irrigation. Second thing to note in the agriculture and allied sector is that most of the growth is experienced in the allied sector. So you'll see that livestock, fisheries are growing at a faster rate than crop farming. Okay, so our crop farming is growing at even a lower rate than what this numbers suggest. Now, what is the government doing in this regard? There are various schemes run by the government to improve our productivity. There is Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana to expand irrigation, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana to provide insurance protection to crops, Pradhan Mantri Kusum Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Urja Suraksha Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan for solar irrigation to cut the input cost. Okay, so as to increase the profitability of agriculture. Then there is Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana for the allied sector for promoting fisheries. There are other schemes as well, as we'll move forward in this video, we'll see. Okay. Next, let's talk about the land holdings. Now, land holding is very important part of agriculture because the amount of land you hold is directly proportional to how much productivity that particular farmer can achieve. Okay, and here we see that the average holding size in India is very small. It is 1.08 hectares. Now in 1970-71, this used to be 2.28 hectares. So the average land holding has decreased by more than half. In fact, if we see the number of small and marginal holdings, farmers who hold land less than 2 hectares, they constitute 86% of all holdings. Okay, their share in total area is only 47%, which means there is a lot of inequality in agriculture, and a small portion of large farmers, they hold more than half of the agricultural land in India. Now, why is the agriculture holding very less? Because of the fragmentation that keeps on happening. The father distributes the land among his children, so there is fragmentation, the farms become tiny. Also, a lot of land now, agricultural land, is being transitioned to commercial land. Okay, so the agricultural land as a whole is also decreasing. The small plots make it difficult to use machines, also to get loans, buy insurance, so there is no economies of scale. There is also the case of unclear land titles. So because the land titles are disputed, a lot of farmers are not able to get loans or formal credit from bank, and they have to go and take informal credit at exorbitant interest rates. Okay, what are some government initiatives in this direction? There is a Digital India Land Record Modernization Program, which is digitizing a lot of land records so that disputes become less. There is survey of villages and mapping with improvised technology in village areas, Swamitwa scheme, where drone technology is used to do rural property mapping. Okay, so that is again one initiative which will decrease a lot of land disputes and give access to formal credit to a lot of farmers. Then there is Model Land Leasing Act, which is a model act that has been brought by the central government to make tenant farming legal and safe. So there is security of tenure in tenant farming. Now, to be kept in mind that agriculture is a state subject. Okay, and because this is a state subject, the states have to implement these. So the center can only bring in model laws, but they cannot impose the law in the states. Another initiative is the farmer producer organization that the government is encouraging, which means that the farmers can come together and form farmer producer organizations and pool in their resources, though, so they have better bargaining power and they can better market their products. Okay. Next, let's come to credit and finance in agriculture. Okay, so because credit or initial finance is a very important part of agriculture, because that enables the farmer to buy all the inputs, invest in its land. So here we see that the active Kisan credit card account. So farmers get a Kisan credit card KCC account through which they can borrow small sums of money. So right now there are 7.75 crore accounts. So a lot of farmers have access to formal credit. If we see the share of credit among small and marginal farmers, it is 57%. In fact, it has grown from 41% in financial year 15 to 57% now, which means that more and more small and marginal farmers are now getting access to formal credit from banks and other financial institutions. So that is a good news. But still, we see that almost 43% of the credit is being cornered by the big farmers. Okay. The informal credit dependence, so the credit dependence on informal sources like local money lenders, sahukars, all that, which used to be 90% in 1950, is down to now just 25%, but still 25% still a very big number. So a lot of formalization of credit needs to happen in the rural areas. So here we can see that the big bankable farmers still get far more credit than small farmers. 43% of the credit is cornered by big farmers, who are 14% of the total farmers, right? 86% of the farmers are small holders. Without clear land titles, a lot of farmers are not able to get loans because they cannot pledge that land as collateral in the banks, and therefore they're not able to get access to formal credit. And formal credit is important because formal credit you can get access to at lesser interest rates, whereas the local money lenders, informal sources, they will charge very exorbitant amount of interest rate. Also, the credit flow, you see a regional discrepancy here, that most of the credit flow is skewed towards Punjab, Haryana, and South India. Okay, whereas the eastern, particularly Eastern India and the Central India, does not get as much credit. So East and Central India gets less. What are some government initiatives here? Of course, there is the Kisan credit card, through which farmers can get cheap loans, micro loans, but at a very cheap rate, 7% interest. And if they repay in time, they get an interest subvention. So 4% on 3% interest subvention they get. So they only pay 4%. There is also MISS, Modified Interest Subvention Schemes, through which the amount of loan that farmers can take has been increased in the recent budget. So now they can take up to 5 lakh of loan, and if they again pay in time, they get an interest subvention. Then there is electronic negotiable warehouse receipt. So if the farmers can they deposit their produce in a warehouse and get a ENWR receipt, they can again use that receipt to get formal credit from banks, so to procure loans. Next, let's come to all the inputs that gets into the land to uh, do farming and create or grow crops. First is foremost seeds. Okay, seed is a very important input. Now, if we see the seed replacement rate in India for cotton, it is almost universal. 99% seed replacement rate is there. Even for hybrid crops like maize and bajra, there is very high seed replacement rate, up to 70 to 95%. But when it comes to major crops like wheat, pulses, oil seeds, the seed replacement rate is only 25 to 30%. Now, this matters because when farmers use their own saved seeds, the yield lowers, right? The yield becomes low. There's also higher risk of pest and disease risk. Okay, so this brings down the productivity. Whereas if they buy certified seeds, the yield is higher, there is lesser pest and disease risk, and the yields becomes higher. The productivity increases. Okay. Now, also there is another angle to it. A lot of private companies which provide seeds, they do not have much motive in investing in self-pollinated crops like wheat. So for wheat, rice, you'll generally see that farmers using their own farm-saved seeds. What are some government initiatives here? There is one initiative, the Seed Village Scheme. So in villages, particularly villages are identified, and seeds, quality seed production is done in those villages itself. So rather than producing seed somewhere else and transporting to the villages, seed villages are being developed. Another initiative is, of course, all the research institutions like Indian Council of Agriculture Research, state agri universities are also supplying breeder seeds for crops such as pulses and oil seeds. Okay. Next, let's come to irrigation. Irrigation is another very, very important input for the farms. If we look at the data, the irrigation coverage of the cropped area is only 55%. So almost half of our agricultural land is irrigated. Half of the agricultural land is still dependent on monsoon. They are still rain fed. Okay. And even those land which are irrigated, the water use efficiency is very low, only 25 to 45%. So most of the irrigation is done through very inefficient means like flood irrigation. In flood irrigation, there is a lot of runoffs and there is a lot of loss of water. So the efficiency is very low. Now, even in irrigation, we see a regional discrepancy. States like Punjab and Haryana has very high coverage, 98% and 94%. Whereas the backward states like Jharkhand, Assam, you see that irrigation is still less than 20%. Okay. Now, to tackle this water use efficiency, the government is trying to push uh, drip and sprinkler methods. Okay, drip and sprinkler methods are more efficient way of irrigation. What are some government initiatives here? There is Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, under which there are various sub schemes like Har Khet Ko Pani, Per Drop More Crop, which promotes micro irrigation. There is also a micro irrigation fund, okay, because micro irrigation, setting up the drip or sprinkler system is expensive. This micro irrigation fund will subsidize if any farmers takes loan to install drip and sprinkler system in their fields. Then there is also the accelerated irrigation benefit program, which is um, financing the major irrigation projects across the country. Okay. Now, next important input is fertilizers. Okay. And in fertilizer, we have very specific problem. The first one is that the ideal NPK ratio, okay, nitrogen to potassium to phosphate to potassium ratio has to be 4 is to 2 is to 1. So this is the scientific recommendation. But what we see in India is that the actual NPK ratio, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium ratio is 9.8 is to 3.7 is to 1. Okay, so it is highly skewed towards nitrogen. And we'll see the reason. And the reason is that urea is very cheap. Okay, so the government provides a lot of subsidy for urea, which is the major fertilizer that is used by the farmers. Whereas the other fertilizer that is also equally important, like diammonium phosphate, muriate of potash, their prices are not highly subsidized, and therefore farmers end up overusing nitrogen in their fields, which again depletes the quality of soil. The fertility is lost, and a lot of even farmers can experience some health effects also. Okay, so it damages soil, pollutes water. Uh, there can be eutrophication because it mixes with the water and runoffs into water bodies. So there is eutrophication of water bodies as well. Also, we are import dependent on a lot of fertilizers, particularly DAP and MOP. 100% of the MOP we import, 40 to 60% of the DAP we import. So there is import dependency as well. Okay. Whereas urea, you see that the price is fixed. It sells for rupees 242 for a 45 kg bag. That price has been fixed since 2018. The price has not changed. And therefore, farmers tend to, because it is only rational, they tend to overutilize urea, which is again not good for their fields fertility. Okay. Now, what are the government initiatives here? First, there is nutrient-based subsidy that has been brought in. So the subsidy will be given as per the nutrient content. But still, the problem is that urea is not inside it. Urea is still selling at a very highly subsidized price, जिसके कारण all those problems is coming in. Okay. Another is the government has started selling neem coated urea. Okay, because urea is also utilized for other purposes, particularly for adulteration of food products. Fake milk, fake paneer, और उसमें urea use होता है. So they are now neem coating urea to reduce diversion and also to improve efficiency, because the neem coated urea releases nitrogen at a very slower rate, which is good for the crops. Okay. Another initiative is nano urea. Nano urea is now being sold. It decreases the amount of urea that has to be applied for the same amount of effectivity. Okay. Another initiative is Prime Minister Program for Restoration, Awareness Generation, Nourishment, and Amelioration of Mother Earth. Okay, and this is an initiative to cut chemical fertilizer use. So use less chemical fertilizers and more biological biofertilizers. Okay. The next input in the field is pesticide. So let's see some data about pesticide. In India, the pesticide use is zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5 kg per hectare. Now, if we compare it to other countries like China, China is much higher at 1.83 kg per hectares. And among all the pesticide, most of the pesticide that is used in India is chemical pesticide. Biopesticide, which is more environmental friendly, uska usage is only around 4 to 8%. Now, even though India's pesticide use is much less than other countries, even here there is discrepancy. The cash crops like cotton gets very high doses of pesticides. There is overuse, and rest of the crops does not get as much pesticide. So maybe to improve the productivity of our uh, crops, there is need to apply more pesticide, but not chemical pesticide. We should move toward transition towards biopesticide. Okay. Now there is poor testing capacity in India, and therefore there is sometimes what happens is pesticide residue enters the food chain through food, and it is also a risk to farmers. Okay. So if the use of pesticide is unchecked, it can also affect the health of farmers. What is the government initiatives here? There is Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, where the government is promoting organic farming and cutting down use of chemical pesticides. Another is integrated pest management. Okay, so it is again an attempt to cut down use of chemical pesticides and combine biological control with limited chemical use. All right. Next input that we have in farms is the technology. Okay, so let's see how many farmers are using technology to improve their productivity. So the government has come up with AgriStack. Okay, so all the information of all the farmers, their identity, the amount of land they use, the types of crops they grow, everything is, uh, you know, there in the farmer IDs that is being generated and given, and a lot of schemes is now directly linked to this farmers ID. So the subsidies or the benefits are directly given to the farmers. So right now 8.4 crore farmer IDs has been generated, and the target is to increase it to 11 crore by financial year 27. Okay, but you see that the most of the farmers in India don't use digital tools. Okay, they're still not very skilled in using digital tools. Less than 20% of the farmers right now use digital tools. There was also a initiative, Namo Drone Didi, where the female members of the self-help groups were being skilled in operating drones so that they can utilize drones for farmings. Okay, so the issue is that the digital infrastructure that exists, so there is existence of digital infrastructure, but there is poor internet, low smartphone use, and low digital literacy, which is keeping a lot of farmers away from using digital tools. Now, making farmer ID compulsory also has an exclusion effect, because a lot of farmers don't have clear land titles, don't have clear land records, and therefore they're not included, and therefore they will be excluded from a lot of benefit that the government gives them. Okay, there is also the concern of privacy and data misuse. Okay, because all the data is being collected, someone can get hold of that data and misuse it. What are some government initiatives here? There's Digital Agriculture Mission, which is building the agri stack, the Krishi Decision Support System. So all the technology at its disposal, the satellite technology, the drone technology, the Internet of Things, even artificial intelligence is being used to help farmers make better decisions, or the decision making is improving. Up to date data is being made available to the farmers. There is also Kisan e-Mitra, where AI chatbot, it is an AI chatbot in regional languages, which is helping the farmers. And Namo Drone Didi we talked about. It is for women SHG members who are skilled in operating the drone. And this drone can be utilized for spraying, it can be utilized for surveying the fields, everything. For a lot of different usage of drones can be there. All right. The next input, very important input in farms, is labor. Okay. Now, in labor, we see that there is a term you'll hear again and again, feminization of agriculture, right? So the female participation in agriculture has been increasing. Okay, we see that the rural female participation rate, which was 23% in 2017-18, is now increased to 40.7%. Okay, and the share of agriculture force that is female is now over 42%. Now, why is this happening? Because agriculture is a low productivity sector. There is not much income in it. A lot of men of the family are moving to cities for work. Okay, and most of these men will end up working as casual labor in the construction sector. And the women who are back left behind in the villages, now they manage the farm. But however, although the participation of women in agriculture is increasing, it is not leading to proportional empowerment of women, because the land ownership is still in the men's name. The men of the family are still owners of the land. Okay, so the status of farmer stays with the men. Okay, so women, although they are participating more, they're not. It is not leading to empowerment of women in the villages. Okay, there is also gender wage gap in the village. So you'll see that even if a man and a woman do same amount of manual labor, the man will get paid more. Okay, and it is even widening in some tasks. So it's not like the gap is closing. So that is another challenge that we have. What are some government initiatives here? One is the employment guarantee program that the government runs. So earlier it was Manrega, now it is Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rojgar and Ajivika Mission. Okay, so it sets a rural wage floor. So at least it ensures that the farm work at least pays a minimum amount. You cannot go below that, because farm labor starts paying below that, then the laborers will have a option to go to Manrega or now VBG Ramji. Okay. Another is, of course, Namo Drone Didi. We have already talked about this. There is also Agri Stack is now given to women farmers as well. Okay. So although largely they are excluded and they do not have ownership of the land, but slowly their participation is increasing and they are given farmers ID. In fact, 1.93 crore ID is so far been issued to women farmers. Okay. So these were all the inputs that goes into the field. Okay, now let's talk about the output of the field. Okay, output in agriculture is crops. So let's talk about crops. The total food grain production in 2024-25 was a record 357.73 million tons. Okay, so this is record production. Of course, every year the production is going to increase slightly until unless something major happens. So every year we experience record production. So right now the number is 357.73 million tons. Now inside this, you'll notice that it is majorly dominated by a couple of crops. Rice is 150 million tons and wheat is 117 million tons. So almost two-thirds of the food grain production is just rice and wheat. Okay, then you have pulses, oil seeds, which are lesser amounts that is being produced in India. We'll see about these crops in this video later. Okay, so what we can say is that rice and wheat dominate growth. So this is the green revolution pattern. Okay, so in green revolution, the particularly wheat and also rice production was increased a lot, and we experienced self-sufficiency in food grains, but it also uses a lot of water and is concentrated in northern India, right? Particularly Punjab, Haryana, and western Uttar Pradesh. Whereas other important food grains like pulses and oil seeds, in these food grains, India is still a very big importer. Okay, we import a lot of our needs. Now, why is this? A major reason is the MSP, minimum support price, and minimum support price is strongest for rice and wheat. So for rice and wheat, farmers have an assurance that the government is going to buy these at minimum support price. So they do not shift to other, which may be more geographically or agronomically, it is more prudent to grow other crops, but farmers are not going because they're not assured of assured product procurement. Okay, तो इसीलिए pulses and oil seeds में shift नहीं कर रहे हैं. The government initiatives here is one, of course, is MSP, but now the government has also come up with a new scheme where they're assuring procurement of pulses. Okay, so tur, urad, chana, moong. Now they have said that they are going to assure their procurement. There is also a scheme, self-reliance in pulse mission. So now the country wants to become self-reliant in pulses and not be import dependent. So that is a 5-year program that is being initiated. Then there is national mission on edible oil seeds to cut import dependence on edible oil, and the production of Shri Anna or millets, right? So millets again is receiving a lot of attention because they are climate resilient. They're also highly nutritious. All right, next let's talk about specifically the pulses. Okay, now the total production of pulses last year was 25.68 million tons. So you see much less as compared to rice and wheat. Okay, in fact the area under pulses cultivation has been decreasing slightly rather than increasing despite all the initiatives by the government. The area under pulses cultivation fell from 30.6 to 26.9 million hectares. Okay. The yield, India's yield has been lower as compared to the global yield. We produce 850 to 900 kg per hectare. The global yield is much higher, 1200 to 1300 kg per hectare. In fact, we are import dependent on pulses, something that we want to become self-sufficient on. But as of now, we are importing 7.3 million tons of $5.5 billion worth of pulses every year. Okay. Now here is something very interesting. India is the world's largest producer of pulses, but we are also the world's largest consumer of pulses, and therefore we are also the world's largest importer of pulses. So this is a real paradox. We are the largest producer, but also the largest importer of pulses, because we have a large population which consumes a lot of pulses. Okay, and also as the per capita income increases and standard of living increases, and the awareness about protein consumption increases, lot more people are going to consume pulses and demand pulses. In pulses, we have a low seed replacement rate because the farmers use their own seeds for pulses rather than procuring certified seeds, which keeps our yield lower. And 87% of the pulses area is rain fed. Okay, so farmers who have access to irrigation are not choosing to grow pulses, rather they grow rice and wheat. Okay, and therefore monsoon, which is not something that we can depend on, it is very volatile, and if there is a bad monsoon in any of the year, the pulses production plummets. What are the government initiative here? We have mission for Atmanirbharta in pulses, okay, where we are targeting self-reliance on specific types of pulses like tur, urad, masoor by December of 2027. We have also guaranteed 100% MSP procurement for tur, urad, and masoor via NAFED and NCCF. Okay, so these are government procurement agencies, and the government have now assured that 100% of pulses production will be procured by the government, and therefore farmers have now incentive to grow pulses in their fields. There is also a push to expand pulses in the rice fallow land in UP, West Bengal, and Bihar. Okay, so right now the rice is grown in one of the seasons, and the other season there is push to grow pulses. Next, another very important crop, and another crop in which we are import dependent, is oil seeds. Okay, so in oil seeds, our production was 42.99 million tons, which was again record production, but cannot satisfy the demand that is there in the country. Okay, so our edible oil import dependence is roughly around 56 to 57%. Okay, so we from a local production, we are only able to satisfy around 43 to 44% of the demand. The rest we have to import, and particularly the palm oil share of import. So even among all the edible oil imports, the palm oil share is around 55 to 60%, and mainly from countries like Indonesia and Malaysia. Okay, so despite record output, over half we are import dependent, and this is a direct a result of the green revolution, because in green revolution a lot of push was on rice and wheat, and oil seeds like mustards, which used to grow in Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, that was replaced by rice and wheat, and therefore the pulses production has decreased at that point of time, and we have not yet been able to recover. Okay, another very important detail with respect to palm oil is, although its yield is good in India, it has a gestation period of 4 to 5 years, okay, before the first harvest, because the palm oil, you have to grow palm trees, and palm trees takes 4 to 5 years to mature and start producing palm oil. Okay, and because there is a initial investment is so high, that discourages a lot of farmers in India. Okay, so a lot of government initiatives here, like a national mission on edible oil seeds, where we are targeting doubling of production by 2030-31. So right now from around 40 million tons to 70 million tons. Okay, then there is national mission on edible oil palm. Oil palm has a slightly different nature because the initial investment is so high, right? So the government is doing price support, viability gap payment, to protect farmers from global price swings. So price of oil palm also swings widely, and therefore some viability gap payment is done here. And in MSP, the MSP for particularly for oil seeds like mustard, groundnut, soybean has been increased. Okay, so the general formula is 1.5 times the cost of production. For particularly oil seeds, the government announces generally 2 times the cost of production. So the profitability of the farmers is high, and they're more incentivized to produce oil seeds. Okay. Next, let's come to crop insurance. Okay, crop insurance is another A very important factor, which because the agricultural is so volatile, dependent on monsoon, there can be crop failures, pest attacks. So many vagaries are there, and therefore it is very important to provide insurance to farmers. Okay, reduce variance in their profitability, but also there have been so much incidents of farmer suicides. तो उसके लिए भी crop insurance बहुत बहुत जरूरी है. The number of farmers who enrolled in Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, which is the flagship crop insurance scheme run by the government, is 4.19 crore. The number has been increasing, but as you see, as compared to the total number of farmers, this is still quite less. Okay. If we talk about farmer premium share, so this is the amount of premium that farmers have to pay is 2% for Kharif, 1.5% for Rabi, and 5% for commercial and horticultural crops. So the premium that farmer has to pay is highly subsidized. Farmers has to pay a very low amount. So it is not even a very big burden on them, and at the same time they get insurance cover. Okay. Now the issue with Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and other insurance programs is that there is farmers distrust. Farmers don't trust because they don't trust the process that is through which they do loss assessment. Okay. Loss assessment has to be assessed. So to pay the farmers when there is crop loss, right? They think that they are being underpaid. Okay, there is also complaints of delayed payment. So if the payment is not made in time, again, that is not good for the farmers because they have to again in the next cycle invest on inputs, invest in their field. So the payment should be on time. There is another criticism that sometimes what will happen is that a farmer will experience loss in his individual land, whereas the wider area there is not much loss, but the loss is right now measured at whole village or block level. Okay, and farmers who suffer losses just in their fields, they may not be compensated accordingly, and therefore that is a big grievance that the farmers have. What are some government initiatives here? First is use of technology. So a lot of technology like yield estimation system based technology, yes tech, which does remote sensing based yield estimation. So there is less error in estimation of loss, and the farmers will get a fair amount at estimated time. There is also winds, which is weather information network data system. So what it provides is more automatic weather station for better data. So again, better data will lead to better estimation of crop loss. There is also a 12% auto penalty on insurance for detailed claim payment. So if some insurance company delays the payment, they will have to bear a penalty, which will again ensure timely payment of insurance money. There's also one nation, one crop, one premium, so that at least some standardization is there, standard premium nationwide, because different parts of the country can have varying yields, varying productivity, and this one nation one crop one premium at least assures that there is some standardization as to the premium that farmers pay. All right, let's talk about value addition or food processing. Okay, now food processing is again a very important part of agriculture, because agriculture product, when it undergoes value addition in terms of some food processing, then its values increases. Also, there is less wastage because the agriculture product have a low shelf life. They are perishable products. Okay, so if with a low shelf life, it has to be made available in the market very soon, and everyone wants to buy fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. But when there is value addition, again, it increases the price. So it increases remuneration for the farmers. At the same time, it increases the shelf life of the agriculture produce and leads to less wastage. So right now, the share of food processing in manufacturing GVA is just 8%. Okay. So we are not doing as much value addition. In fact, less than 9% of value addition, which means that most of the India's agriculture produce is produced and sold raw and not processed, and therefore extra profit that farmers can make right now, they're not taking benefit of that. Okay, now there are several reasons for this. Of course, One is that we have a weak cold chain, uh, and therefore a lot of post-harvest losses are happening. We require cold chain because again the agriculture produce is perishable, and therefore to reduce the food wastage, we need cold storages, we need uh, refrigerator transport and all these that right now we don't have in sufficient quantity. Okay. Also, most of the processing units in India are small, informal, and can't meet the export quality standards. You'll see that mostly in villages there are cottage industries which are doing food processing, making turning fruits or vegetables into pickles, achar, papad. So low level of food processing is happening. Maybe some masala uh, processing is done, but that is not standard. Small, informal, so there is no economies of scale, and at the same time export quality, because export quality needs certification, that is not being done by them, and therefore we are missing out on a lot of value there. What are some government initiatives here? There is PLI scheme for food processing industry. So if any food processing industry does well, if they do extra sales in ready to eat processed foods and vegetables, marine products, then they are provided some incentives. Then there is PM Kisan Sampada Yojana, which funds cold chains and food parks so that more cold chains are set up, which will again lead to more food processing. Then there is Pradhan Mantri formalization of micro processing enterprises, because a lot of majority of the food processing right now is very small, informal. तो उनको formalize करने के लिए there is this program which under which one district one product is run. Okay, so each of the district in India have some uh, specialization, some specific product that they excel in, and therefore that product is identified, and that the food processing of that particular product is encouraged in those areas. All right. Next, let's talk about transport. So we have talked about inputs in the farms. We have talked about the output, the crops, different crops, storage. Now these food, whether it is raw or processed, has to be transported to the market. Okay, and therefore transportation is very important part of agriculture. Right, what is the situation right now? The post-harvest losses are 20 to 30%. So we are losing value of around 90,000 crore every year just because of post-harvest losses. We do not have sufficient infrastructure and logistics to ensure that the food is not getting the crops are not getting spoiled, or they're not getting rotten, or um, not being eaten by rodents. We are not able to ensure that, and losing 20 to 30% of the value. The total roads built under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana is over 7 lakh kilometers. So now most of the villages are now connected with Pakka road to the market. So that is a good thing. But still, if we see the India's logistic cost, just the cost of transporting and storing, it is around 30 to 14% of the GDP, which is very high. Okay, so a lot of this value, if we reduce the cost of logistics, the whole agriculture sector will become much more efficient. Okay, so a third of food and vegetables lost due to poor transport and storage. The logistic cost has to be decreased. In the developed country, it is only around 8 to 10%, and therefore the profitability of the farmers increases, the food processors increases, and even the final consumers will get the product at a reduced price. So we have to really work on transport and storage, which makes up the logistic. What are the government initiatives in transport? Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana to connect the villages with Pakka roads. Then PM Gati Shakti, of course, this is a wider plan for multimodal transport, which will also help agriculture, transporting agriculture produce. So linking road, rail, ports to cut delays. Then specific initiative in railways is Kisan Rail. Okay, so Kisan Rail will have refrigerated coaches so that post-harvest losses is minimized, and the markets receive fresh produce. Okay. Next, let's talk about storage. In storage, since we already know that after total our total food grain production last year was around 357 million tons, our scientific storage capacity in India right now is only around 145 million tons. Okay, so we are only able to store around 47% of our total production scientifically. Okay, so where are we storing rest of the produce? Mostly at the household level using traditional methods. We are storing 60 to 70% at the household level, and which is not very scientific. Okay, and that leads to a lot of post-harvest losses. So scientifically, we are storing less than half. So rest, there is a lot of spoilage, a lot of pest attack, pest damage. There is there. Most of the produce, either in UP and Bihar, which produces most of the agriculture produce, वहाँ पे least storage capacity है. Okay, and even then the government has assured that we will buy everything, but the government does not have the storage capacity. Okay, so what they generally do is they procure from the farmers but store it in open weather export storage, and that again leads to a lot of spoilage. So what is the government doing here? One is the goal to create world's largest storage plan. So the government is working towards creating village level godowns, which will have large capacity, and this will be linked to the primary agriculture credit societies packs. Okay, so these are cooperative banks, and they will also have godowns of their own, which will be scientific godowns, so the losses will be reduced. Then there is also a lot of work towards modern steel silos, replacing open cover and plinth storage. So right now, a lot of storage is being done in open areas. You would see if you go to a mandi, you would see large heaps of um, wheat or rice just openly lying there, and there is no protection from rain or from moisture or from rodents, rats, etc. So instead of that, the government is erecting modern steel silos, which will be, uh, more temperature controlled, moisture control will be there, and safer storage will be done. There is also electronic negotiable warehouse receipt. So once the farmer deposit their produce in these warehouses, they'll get a ENWR receipt, which they can pledge as collateral and get loans from the banks. Next, let's talk about marketing. Okay, if we see the total number of regulated mandis in India stands at 7,690 mandis in India. But the Swaminathan committee wanted 42,000 mandis. In fact, Swaminathan committee recommended that there should be a mandi every 80 square kilometers in India. Okay, so that the farmers don't have to travel long distances to go to a mandi and auction their produce, which leads to a lot of again post-harvest losses, loss of time, and also is expensive for the farmers. Okay, if we see the number of mandis that is linked to ENAM, Electronic Natural Agriculture Market, that is around 1,400 to 1,600 mandis, and the farmers registered at ENAM is around 1.7 to 1.8 crores. So still not many farmers are linked to ENAM, and they still auction their produce in a regular APMC mandi. Okay, India has far fewer mandi, and therefore forcing long distance travel and distress sale, because farmer also has to sell off their produce quickly. They cannot sit out and wait for prices to increase. Okay, what also happens is that there is a lot of middlemen. Okay, a small group of traders, middlemen, or hatias, and they collude among themselves to keep artificially low price. Okay, so they will not in the auction, they will not bid very high, and therefore farmers are not able to get fair market rate. Also, agriculture marketing is a state subject. Agriculture is a state subject, and therefore all of these mandis work as separate disconnected markets. There is no connection, and therefore the prices can be different in different mandis, and the farmers do not have um, the access to information so that they can choose to sell at a higher price. Of course, they can register in ENAM and sell their produce online, but still that is only a partial success. It is not available at all the mandis. All the mandis are not connected, and only a handful of farmers right now have access to e-Nam. What are the government initiatives? Of course, there's e-Nam, which is an online trading platform portal which links the mandis so that farmers can auction their produce online and get a fair price, and anyone across the country can buy that produce. Second is Model APMC Act that the central has brought. Again, because agriculture is a state subject, the central can only bring a model act. It is up to the state to implement these. So this Model APMC Act allows direct marketing and contract farming outside of the old mandi system. Okay. So rather than forcing the farmers being forced to sell at the mandi, they can choose to do direct marketing, sell directly to some food processing company, or have a contract farming in with some food processing company, can get into a contract with the farmer to grow the specific crop, which finally the food processing company will buy. There is also farmer producer organization promotion. So the central government, it has targeted 10,000 FPOs to create 10,000 FPOs so that small farmers can come together and have more bargaining power. They can pool in their resources and create economies of scale. Okay. Next, let's talk about the international trade of agriculture produce. Okay, so total agri produce last in financial year 25 stood at $51.9 billion. Okay, but out of that, a majority is these things: rice export, which is around 12 to $13 billion; marine product exports, and particularly shrimps, okay, is at 7 to $7.5 billion, and processed food is very less. Only around 17% of what we are exporting is processed food. If we compare it with USA and China, then USA is exporting 25%, China is exporting 50%, which means we are not able to, because processed food is going to be expensive, will fetch more price, and then we are not able to fully utilize the potential of exporting processed food. So one is India's export depend primarily on just few items: rice, marine product, particularly shrimps, and spices. Okay, and that makes us very vulnerable, because for these particular products, if the price falls, then that will impact our exports. Also, sometimes what happens is, for ensuring food security in the country, the government bans export of certain food items like rice, wheat, sugar. Now, what it does is, it decreases our export revenue, but at the same time makes us unreliable supplier. Okay, so foreign buyers will not rely on India for their supplies, and they look for other countries to procure, and that is a loss for us. Also, 40% food spoils before reaching market, which limits our exportable surplus. We are not able to ensure less wastage. At the same time, particularly the developed countries, European countries, USA, they require higher levels of standardization, which at times India is not able to uh, do. What are the government initiatives here? There are various government initiatives. There is APIDA, which is a export promotion body for agri-produce. Then there are various commodity boards for individual commodities like marine MPDA for marine products. There is spice board, tea board, coffee board. So as to promote these specific products for export. Now India is also signing free trade agreement with a lot of countries like UAE, Australia, UK, European countries. That gives better market access to our agriculture produce. So these are the various government initiatives. Okay. Next is MSP. Okay, so let's talk about government procurement, because India is not a very rich country. A lot of people live below poverty line or around poverty line, and they need food at a subsidized price. Now, it is not always possible for everyone to procure food directly from the market, and therefore the government procures a lot of food directly for farmers and distributes among the population through its fair price shops. Okay, So total number of crops notified through MSP is 23 crops, so 22 crops plus FRP for sugar. Now the MSP margin guarantee that right now the government gives is at least 50% over the cost of production. Okay, so the government has a formula A2 plus FL, which is the total cost plus the family labor. उसका एक estimate करके cost of production calculate किया जाता है, and the MSP is at least set 1.5 times above that. Okay, but although the government announces MSP for 22 crops plus sugar, the real large scale procurement only happens for rice and wheat. Okay, and mostly concentrated in states of Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. So this is MSP is not a universal safety net for other parts of the country. Generally, it is not available. Now, what this does is pushes farmers to grow rice and wheat, because only rice and wheat they have assurance that procurement will be done. So they grow rice and wheat and ignore pulses and oil seeds. Okay. Now this rice, wheat, and are also very water intensive. And because of that, a lot of these areas, particularly Punjab, Haryana, are experiencing water shortage. You'll see that the water level, groundwater level is going down in these areas. There's weak procurement in Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, and sometimes the farmers are not able to sell at MSP, and they sell at lower price than MSP in open market. Now, what is the government doing here? One is that MSP hike it is doing particularly for crops that government wants to incentivize. So pulses, oil seeds, millets, the government sets MSP which is even higher than 1.5 times the cost of production. So generally around 2 times the cost of production. Okay. And then 100% MSP procurement for pulses like Tur, Dar, Masoor, we have already discussed this. Also, digital tools is being used like eSamyukti, Kapas Kisan app for farmers to register for MSP procurement easily. Okay, next let's talk about buffer stocks. Now, buffer stocks, if you see that the government first comes up with norms that how much buffer the government should be stocking. Okay, the buffer stock is important for food security of the country, but you'll see that particularly for wheat and rice, the actual stock is much higher than the norm. So wheat norm is 275 lakh metric tons. Actual wheat stock is much higher at 358 lakh metric tons. Rice buffer norm is 135 lakh metric tons, but the actual rice stock is 377. Why is this? Because the procurement is assured, right? So whatever that is grown in India, the government will have to procure it. So sometimes it procures more than almost all the time it procures more than the loan, and then ends up storing them in open spaces, which leads to a lot of spoilage. So they stocks are more than required buffer, resulting in result of open-ended MSP buying. Okay, now extra grain, the storage is required. That is storage not available. They also have to maybe rent out storage, and they end up paying a lot of rent and interest on that. Then stock is kept in open storage, which gets spoiled and or damaged. So that is another factor. Now, what are the government initiatives here? One is that Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, they have set buffer norms for every quarter, that in this quarter, this much buffer we want to maintain. But generally, we'll see that at least for rice and wheat, the government end up storing more than the buffer norm. Another initiative is the open market sales scheme. So the government says that if the stock is more than the buffer norm, you can sell it in the open market. Okay, it will also keep the price, it will also cool down the prices. It will keep the price lower. So that is another scheme that the government has. Then Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana is there, which was started in COVID-19, where rather than subsidize, the government is now distributing the grains for free. Okay, so surplus stock is used to give free food. Almost 80 crore to 85 crore of the population are given food for free through the fair price shops. Okay, next let's come to the fair price shops. Now, the total number of fair price shops in India are around 5.41 lakh. Okay, so almost you can say that all villages in India have fair price shops, and almost all of them are automated with electronic point of sale machine. Okay, so everything is not digitalized. 99.8% of this FSPS are digitalized. So you have a ration card, you go to a shop and they have a point of sale machine. They take up your biometric and it is connected to through your Aadhaar, and you get your subsidized grain, right? Now, this helps in uh, at least ensuring that there is less leakages from the fair price shops. Although earlier what used to happen was, and even now it happens a lot, that a lot of food grains will be diverted, black marketed to open market, and people will not get subsidized grain from fair price shops. But now, because there is uses of Aadhaar, biometric, and point of sale machine, that a lot of this has been reduced. Okay. Now, a very big criticism of fair price shops right now is that they're giving calories. So they're giving rice and wheat, but not enough nutrition. Okay. So there is a concept known as hidden hunger, which means that you are consuming a lot of calories, but not enough nutrition. Okay. So that is a big criticism of fair price shops, leading to malnutrition scores in India. Another is that Aadhaar biometric checks reduce fake beneficiaries, but can wrongly exclude the genuine ones, because sometimes what happens, there is no internet, there is device failure. So even genuine beneficiaries who really need subsidized grain, they may be excluded. What are some government initiatives here? One is One Nation, One Ration Card. Okay. So earlier, the migrant workers, they would go in different states and work there and they would not get access to fair price shops, but now they can. Okay. So if you have a ration card, you can get grains from any food grains from any fair price shop. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, we have already talked about free food for the National Food Security Act beneficiaries. All right. Next, let's talk about the allied sector. We already know that most of the growth that is being registered in the agricultural and allied sector, it comes from the allied sectors. Okay. Right now, the allied livestock share in total GVA is 5.5%, up from 4.4% in 2014-15. So the share of livestock in total GVA has been increasing. So more and more farmers are now also rearing livestock along with doing crop farming. Okay, milk production, may we are the world's largest producer of milk. In fact, we produce almost 1/4 of the total global production, 25%. In egg production, we are the second globally. Meat production, also very high meat production we do. And the cattle is mostly owned by the small and marginal farmers. So 70% of the cattle are owned by small and marginal farmers, so which is good because it is an additional source of income. It is a source of insurance for them. They can pledge their cattle and get loans. So a lot of benefits from owning cattle. Now, uh, the analysis is that most of the growth in the livestocks or the allied sector comes from high yield animals. So animals who produce more milk, and not uh, just by having more animals. Okay, so sometimes the disease, the outbreak of disease like lumpy skin disease can really hurt the output of these animals. Now, second is, since most of these cattle are with small farmers, okay, so it is a good source of income, but also there is the risk for disease and price. It if there is disease, there is some other dip in prices of animal produce like eggs or meat or milk, then it can really hurt the farmers as well. What are some government initiative here? Rashtriya Gokul Mission hai for developing indigenous cattle breeds. There is National Livestock Mission, which gives feed, fodder, also supports entrepreneurs in this area. Then for controlling disease, there is National Animal Disease Control Program, which does vaccination drives, the timely vaccination of animals, also tackles diseases like foot and mouth diseases, whose incidence has fallen over the years. Okay, so 2025, there was only 6 incidents of foot and mouth disease. If we talk about other allied sector, poultry, then in poultry egg production, we produce more than around 150 billion eggs every year. And the poultry meat share of total meat is more than half. Okay, so of all the total meat that is consumed in India, more than half of it is poultry meat, okay, or chicken meat. Uh, Now the issue is that even if there is a small bird flu outbreak, okay, bird flu hits India from time to time, the prices of poultry can really reduce. Okay, so that can hurt the poultry farmers. Also, the feed that is used for poultry, the feed that is used, it consists of maize and soy meal. Okay, they can make up 65 to 70% of the cost of the feed, poultry feed. So the poultry feed is dependent on the crop prices also. Okay, so if the crop prices increase, the poultry feed prices increase, that will lead to increase in prices of poultry. And most of the poultry business in India is still very small and informal. So farmers will be doing poultry farming in their backyards, in their fields, and there's no large scale poultry as such. Okay, there are some, but more prevalent is the small and informal uh, poultry business. Okay, what are some government initiatives here? There is assistance to state for control of animal disease. So uh, it funds vaccination against poultry diseases. So poultry diseases like bird flu, uske against vaccination, everything is done. National Livestock Mission, we have already talked about. So it also gives subsidy for poultry farms. Let's talk about fishery. So our global rank in fish production is second globally. Okay, so we do 8% of the global output, but particularly we export a lot of shrimps. Okay, so frozen shrimp share of export value is 50 to 66%, which means more than half of our uh, marine export. Okay, so small scale fishers right now are 90% of the workforce, but they are catching less than 10% of the total marine catch, which means that the big fishermen with big trawlers and boats, they catch most of the fish in India. They're the biggest beneficiary. And we are very heavily dependent on just one product, that is shrimp. Okay. And therefore, our export, although shrimp is a big part of it, is risky also. Okay. There is also another criticism that a lot of young and juvenile fish is caught, and it really impacts the long-term fish stock. Okay, so we do not want to catch young and juvenile fish, but these big trawlers which have large nets, they end up catching a lot of young and juvenile fish because the nets are very tightly knit together, and they have so the net should be the solution is that the net should be sufficiently wide enough so that all these young fish, they end up escaping and we catch only the adult large fishes. What are the government initiatives here? Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana is there, which wants to bring blue revolution by investing in infrastructure and technology. Then Pradhan Mantri Matsya Kisan Samriddhi Yojana, which wants to formalize the fishing, because now, right now there are a lot of small fishermen doing informal fishing. So we want to formalize this and subsidize aquaculture insurance. Okay, so providing insurance also to the fishermen. Next allied sector is beekeeping. Now, beekeeping, uh, the product that we get from there is honey, right? There is also a lot of other products like bee wax, or there are other products, but bee honey is the main product. Okay, and in global honey export rank, we are at number 2 right now after China, up from 9th in 2020. So we have made a lot of progress in the area of beekeeping. If we talk about the share of production exported out of everything that we are producing in India, more than 60% of it we end up exporting. Okay, so domestic market mein there is not a lot of consumption of honey, but we end up exporting a lot of it. Uh, but the beekeepers who are using modern methods are only 20 to 25, which means a lot of beekeepers, majority of the beekeepers in India are using traditional methods, okay, which is not as productive. So we have become a top honey exporter, but still a lot of beekeepers using old methods. A big criticism is adulteration. You'll see a lot of it. It's very difficult to find pure honey. Everything is adulterated, right? And therefore, the trust factor that is something we have to work upon, both at domestic and with respect to exports. The government initiative here is National Beekeeping and Honey Mission, which covers productivity, processing, research. Then there is also Honey Mission in Khadi and Village Industries Commission, which trains a lot of beekeepers. So 30 lakh farmers are trained, and their bee boxes are distributed, so they will be able to do beekeeping as well in their farms, which has multiplier effect. So they do beekeeping, they produce honey, they sell honey and get additional income. But at the same time, these bees are also pollinating the crops, so the crop production will also increase. All right. And finally, let's talk about the consumers. Okay. Now, if we talk about the food and beverages share in the new CPI, so the government has come up with a new CPI series where they have changed the base year from 2012 to 2024. Okay. And the share of food in food and beverages in the new CPI, earlier it was slightly higher at around 42%. That has been reduced, but still it is the single largest entity in the CPI basket. Okay, so even after the cut, food is still the biggest part of CPI. So you understand that an average person in India spends most amount of money in food. Okay, so food is so important, and therefore when the food price swings, it hits inflation very really hard. Yes, we really feel the pinch when the price of tomatoes or onions increases, right? Now, also the poor households spend a much bigger share of income on food, so they are hurt the most. That is also expected because everyone has to consume food. The poorer household, of course, will end up paying a larger share of their income on food, and therefore they are really impacted by food inflation. Now we have already discussed this. The food is public distribution system through fair price shops. It takes care of calories. It gives you rice and wheat and uh, coarse grains, but it is not fulfilling your nutritional security. So the hidden hunger, nutrition is not being fulfilled right now. So some government initiatives here is, of course, CPI, new CPI series, PDS plus Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. Through this, food is being provided for free. But to tackle the hidden hunger, there is Poshan. Okay, so earlier used to be midday meal scheme. Now it is renamed as Poshan, but it is essentially the same thing, that nutritious food is provided to students, school-going students, and pregnant women and new mothers. Okay, apart from fortified rice and other things, so that more and more nutrition is given and not just calories. All right, so this was all the value addition that you can do to your answers in agriculture. I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much.